Welcome to the Blackburn End Podcast, and we're back for another therapy session. I thought we were done with therapy sessions this year, but no, we're back, and Rovers are doing the most Rovers things once again. Why does this keep happening? What needs to change? We'll get into all of that, but let's get into the headlines. So Eustace has the last laugh as Derby beat Rovers 2-1. Fans are left furious at the poor start to the game. Man United seem to be interested in Pears, and the fans have had their say after that game. Rovers now dropped to 8, 3 points off playoffs after results have just gone against us. But we now need to dust ourselves off as we face Stoke and Cardiff before the international break. Mark, I don't get it. What's happening?
We said last week, didn't we, that maybe this is a new Rovers. Maybe we need to stop thinking that it always happens and then they remind us why we do. Obviously, I went at weekend. My daughter was like, what's going on? And we just all came to the conclusion, basically, Mike, that it's character building being a Rovers fan. And you're in it now. That's it. We are in it. And yeah, it was just inevitable, I'm afraid. It shouldn't be, exactly. But it was.
Death, taxes, and Rovers doing Rovers things. Those are the three things you can count upon.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What a time to be a Rovers fan. So let's get into that Derby game. We've got our initial match reaction. Let's play that. Obviously, bits of emotion here, but yeah, let's get this one played.
Okay, mate, here's my honest review. I sent you one just now, which obviously, if I just bleeps, I don't think we'd have any words that we could actually put out there that would be worthwhile. Yeah, really frustrating once again. We're just so up and down. We predicted it though, didn't we? We said that, you know, the psychology behind Rovers is that when this kind of thing happens, when there's a storyline to a game, we're the ones that come up short, and it's happened once again. The start was absolutely Sunday League. In fact, Sunday League teams would be offended for me saying that. It was absolutely atrocious. Everyone knows Pears just came out into no man's land. He looked weak, looked like he just wasn't ready to come and claim it. And it just keeps happening. It keeps happening over and over again. The formation change, I mean, you could argue to say it kind of worked for the fact that we got a goal, but yeah, it didn't work well enough. But yeah, there's just so much this team needs to stabilise itself on and off the pitch. But on the pitch, yeah, it's just too up and down. I mean, I genuinely, mate, with this podcast, I never know what's going to happen the week after. One week we're massively up, the next week we're massively down. I'm going to need a therapist.
I really don't want to record this, Mike. I can't believe how disorganised, how lacking in cohesion, how we didn't seem to know what anyone was doing, what our roles were, particularly when we went to 5 at the back. It was just like a team of individuals. Got to follow the work rate and the effort at all, but it was just everything about it was a million miles from what we've been all season. Those first 6 minutes were just shambolic. I do wonder if he part of his tactic was to get the centre halves, get them wide and get them isolated, and then that's worked obviously, and then we've changed 3 at the back. But it looked like we've never worked on that 3 at the back. And I mean, the goal, yeah, we huffed and puffed, but it were quite comfortable for Derby, weren't it? Poor. I'm not looking forward to this one.
But we have to do it, don't we? We have to sit down now and talk about it. A very frustrating game. I think the thing that frustrated me the most was, along with all the other fans, was just how quick it seemed to just all fall apart.
They were very, very pumped up for the game, and we looked like we hadn't even warmed up. And it was then game over. And it was as simple as that. It was, at best, naive and ill-prepared. And at worst, it was, for the first time this season, a question of commitment for a few of them, I think, in terms of challenges, in terms of putting bodies on the line. And that's the first time I've heard anybody questioning that. Me, personally, I didn't feel that. But it was pretty shambolic. Yeah.
I think the thing is for me with this team is I've always said that they're a determined bunch. They're a sum of all parts team. And when you have a game like this, you need an individual to take hold and take control. Someone that not necessarily a Travis that's grabbing it by the scruff of the neck, but someone that shows that little bit of quality, someone that just looks like they're going to step above. And we've had your Schmodics, your Brereton's, your Armstrongs that'll just have that moment of magic that then gets everyone else going. And whilst Gay's doing his best at the moment, getting these goals, it just felt like a team that they look quite scared and they look very unstable. And I've not known it be like that. I mean, we get our poor games now and again. We've had them. You know, we talk about the Coventry one, the Fulham one when we got absolutely tanked. You're going to have games like that. But I think the thing is this game meant a lot to a lot of people, and that's why it hurts that little bit more.
Yeah, I think I've almost tried to process it in two parts. I think we could have, whilst we'd have been very disappointed, you could have taken, in any game in the Championship, you could have taken going to Derby and losing. It can happen. Poor refereeing decision, a bad bit of luck, somebody slip, whatever it is, that kind of thing can happen. We know that in the Championship. So I think the 2-1 defeat on paper is one thing. Poor, but one thing. For me, I was really, really concerned at the performance. I thought it was night and day from what I've seen for most of the season. I think we've talked time and time again about how, like you were just saying, this team has such belief in the system, such belief in each other, such a determination to fight for each other, such a real understanding of their own roles and each other's roles, where they need to be, where somebody else should be if they need to fill in. And it looked like, for the first time in a long time, we picked a team and thrown them on the pitch and let them figure it out on the go. Particularly when we went to 5. Now, I know what you're saying at the beginning. In some respects, we scored and we didn't concede when we went to 5 at the back. But I think that was as much to do with the fact that Eustace did what Eustace does and just shut the game down, really. And they didn't need to come at us at that point. And I'm going to be honest. I know some people will say I'm overreacting. And maybe it's because I'm still emotional because I went to the game. But I was really worried by that performance. I was. And I hope we shake it off very quickly and we have a 6-point week. But right now, I am very, very concerned by that performance.
And we've had this before, haven't we? We've had these kind of performances. We've come on podcast and we've discussed it, and we had the Birmingham game, didn't we, where we won 4-2, and we could just tell there was something not right. Sometimes you just get this gut feeling. The one thing that we try and do is we try and have that balanced opinion, and you look at the result as one thing, but the performance as the other. And the performance here was just absolutely terrible, and it just was all born out of that first 7 minutes. I was going to say 10 minutes, but first 7 minutes. We don't normally have this defensive frailty like we showed. It was very much Sunday League defending. And let's discuss that first goal. Pears, he just looked extremely weak. Everyone knew. I mean, I like to pride myself on talking goalkeepers. Everyone knows it and gets bored to death with my analysis of it. But Stevie Wonder could see like how bad that was for a goalkeeper to come out and that's someone that didn't want to get hurt, stretch their arm to try and get something, put himself in no man's land. You shouldn't have this as a professional keeper. And these things are happening now a bit too often. And things are creeping in, and they say form is temporary. What's the saying? It's gone out of my head.
Form is temporary, class is permanent. Yeah.
Oh, jeez. It's been a long day.
It's been a long weekend.
But you look and it's like, so his form was good, but actually his class isn't that good. So it's like he'd lifted himself for a bit and he lured us into this false sense of security that maybe he was a really good goalkeeper, but he's got too much of this in him. Now, I'm going to balance it out and say, majority of goalkeepers have, especially at this level. I mean, we've discussed some pretty high-profile goalkeepers making high-profile gaffes. But again, to talk about the performance of the team, for me, it wasn't the error, it was how the error came about, the fact that it was weak. If he'd come out, clattered the guy, looked strong, dropped it, I'm okay with that. But it just looked very weak. And I think everyone was just then frustrated and flat. And then we obviously concede the next one, which was scrappy as hell. It was just awful quality.
It was. And there was loads and loads that you can pick up from our point of view because it was appalling. But having watched it 2 or 3 times, I don't know why I did that to myself, but I've watched it 2 or 3 times back, both goals in particular, from a Derby point of view, because we know how good Eustace is at picking holes in the opposition. We know how good Eustace is at nullifying the opposition. And I actually think they played for it. I think they played on the fact that we might not be at the races from the outset. And he utilised, I mean, he did it all game. He utilised set pieces, threw the ball in there, put Pears under pressure, put bodies around him. And then the second goal, I think there was points in that he's exploited as well. But just on that first goal, I think that it was the feeling amongst the fan base was exactly what you've just described. If you have a goalkeeper and he comes and cleans everybody out and the ball ends up falling and it goes in the net, yes, you're going bonkers. But you can kind of get that. This felt like I've got to go for it, but it was half-hearted. It felt like there was no real desire to win the ball. There was no everything that we criticised. Somebody who we'll talk about later on in the opposition's box. No real determination to say that's my ball. I'm going to get it, and it didn't take much for them to win that ball. But I do think they also exploited our slow start and aerially. I think they knew what they were doing and they played on it and they bullied us.
That's exactly what we said last week. He knows our weakness and he knows he's a smart manager. We've said it before. That's why obviously a lot of fans were upset when he left. You know, we know what kind of manager he was, and he knows our weaknesses. And like we said it last week, and you've just said it there, he was going to exploit that as much as he could. He did, and to be fair, it worked a treat.
Yeah, and then I think the second goal, it was poor, very poor from our perspective. I thought it was very naive. We got suckered in, but when you watch it back, it's not too much creativity from them. It's nothing wonderfully individually. But what they do is they draw Ribeiro on. They play the ball inside. They knock it wide again, which means Hyam has to come outside. And it's no coincidence that Rovers look shaky at the back when Dom Hyam has to play on that left-hand side. And even more so, we know his strengths and we know the strengths of Rovers this season, and it's when we defended within the width of the box. Eustace had us all the time, and our best performances were when the fullbacks were on the edge of the box and the centre halves were on the D almost, either side of it, and we played within the width of the box. He managed to get us within 2 or 3 passes. The fullback was out the picture. Your centre half, who's right-footed, was on the left-hand side, obviously, right out to the wing where he doesn't want to be. Isolated him there. Carter's then left with 2 men, doesn't really know which to go for. 2-0. And it was a mess again.
Yeah, and we used to praise, obviously, that defensive unit of Carter and Hyam, but they just got pulled apart. And then it was just scrappy in the goal. And, you know, no one was commanding it. No one was taking control. And that's not just a goalkeeper. That's all of them. I mean, I was astounded. I was absolutely. I mean, I knew that Rovers were going to do something stupid. I just had that feeling, but yeah, to get those 2 goals. I mean, I felt like when I saw the starting lineup, I thought, do you know what? This is quite attacking. This is something that can be quite exciting. I was excited to see how Hashi was going to play, and I was really excited. And then 7 minutes in, stadium, like their stadium, part of the stadium's rocking, ours is flat. and it just felt like that was it. Everyone may as well go home.
Yeah, well, we know Valerian's obviously getting to know the squad and getting to know the team, and he's obviously listening to the podcast, and he decided that Mike Beaty's starting 11 was the way to go. And like I said to you, that's the team I want to watch. So I saw the team and I was like, wow, he's going for it. He's going to a team that are low on confidence. And we talked about how when you go into a team low on confidence, you've got to give them that feeling of actually nothing's changed. It's happening again. And there's two ways of doing that. You keep the ball or you fly at them. We've obviously set up to fly at them personnel-wise, but have not done that at all, whether that was the intention or whether it was just not. But within 7 minutes, like you said, I was stood there and I'll be honest, I was just chuckling. It wasn't amusing. It was just like a
comical.
I can't believe, this is Rovers. This is the most Rovers thing in the world, but I can't believe even we've done it this bad. This is just a spectacular effort.
Do you think things would have been different if Garpo had stayed on? Do you think we would have gone on and reacted a lot better? Because obviously he goes off around the 15-minute mark. And then obviously the formation's changed. We haven't got that pace going forward. Do you think if that hadn't happened and we'd kept going, do you think the game would have changed a bit more?
In all honesty, no. I judged the game in two parts. So I looked at the first bit when we were in the formation we were and with Carbo. He's definitely got something. And I'm really, really keen to see how he ends up as a Rovers player. But he was trying too hard. He was running down blind alleys at times. He was making poor choices. He didn't get his head up. Travis was arguing with him, having a right pop at him. And the team, just before he went off, were so disjointed, but they were falling out with each other. I've never seen that from us.
They were frustrated, didn't they?
They were all arguing. They looked a team full of frustration, yeah. And Cardboard sat down. Obviously, he's done his hamstring, and the Derby fans were singing, "He's had enough," and it felt like that. It really did. And now he wasn't the only one. If he had enough, but because he was getting frustrated because he was trying too hard and he was looking up and there's just nobody there, or it was going back to Ribeiro, but he couldn't cross the ball. It was men against boys a little bit. It really was. And I don't know where that performance came from in some senses. I know we're half joking saying, it's a Rovers thing to do, but that's not the team I recognise. They're not the individuals I recognise. And I don't know whether the players were feeling sorry for themselves after that first 7 minutes, whether the occasion and the emotion got to them a little bit, because these are players that have really played for that manager. These are players that have strong bonds with that manager. And the supporters have been split on it, haven't they? Let's not pretend that they haven't. Yes, there's been a large number that are snakes and they are Eustace. And some of that's just because he talked about it being a family and the Alan Nixon reports that he's been touting himself around and all of that kind of thing. But even some of those supporters, but a large proportion of supporters are definitely in the camp of, well, Venky should have backed him. Sahel should have backed him. Wygate should have backed him, whoever they want to blame. But actually the blame lies elsewhere, not with Eustace. And we've talked about Eustace saying about the contracts and they need extending. And I think near enough every Rovers fan agrees with him in that sense. So you're not telling me that the players don't feel a bit let down by the club as well. Now, they might feel let down by the manager as well, but they must have felt really conflicted. And then the fact that that manager who they really, really care for and have been on a journey together, if they feel he's been let down and then they've been exploited and almost embarrassed in 7 minutes, we don't know what they've seen on the training ground that week. We don't know what they're feeling about the new manager. I said last week, it's almost a stepdad thing. Somebody's coming in and saying, right, no, we're doing it this way, even if he's not changing much. And it must be really, it feels a really awkward situation.
Yeah, because I was looking at it and I was trying to figure out, was it a nervous thing? Was it like there was an occasion to the game that they built up. We'd built up as fans. They'd built up as players, and then to have them then be bombarded with the aerial balls, which obviously we weren't coping well with. I think they looked very shell shocked. I think they looked. It's like they looked emotionally drained after it.
Yeah,
it was like the occasion got to them, and there shouldn't have been an occasion. It shouldn't have been listed as being an occasion.
I mean, it was it that they took the game lightly and they thought, oh, it's Derby, we'll play this way and we'll go attacking and we'll rip them to shreds. Was it that, I mean, I watch boxing, I've talked about, a few boxing analogies a few times. You see some fighters that they talk about are gym fighters because they get to the arena, the adrenaline's been pumping all day, they're under the lights, they do their ring walk, they've spent all their energy, they get in the ring and they have an adrenaline dump and they're absolutely knackered after 2 rounds. They looked absolutely knackered after 7 minutes, but that's not a physical thing. That's whether it's adrenaline, whether it's mental, whether they didn't believe in what they were doing, they didn't believe in the system. Only they can answer all of these questions, and they might be different for each individual. But whatever it was an absolute dog mess of a performance. And
do you think the manager has anything to do with that, Ismae?
He has to do in some way. I'll be honest, when they went 5 at the back, so obviously Eustace Cardboard goes off and he goes 5 at the back. Now, I understand that because he matched them up and it stopped to some extent their flow because they were just dragging our centre halves out wide and it was exploding us every single time they went forward, which for a team who hasn't scored this year is a joke. But when he changed formation, sometimes Eustace would change formation and it felt like it was something that was pre-rehearsed and the players still might take them a couple of minutes, but they still kind of knew what they were doing. This really felt like they were figuring it out on the go. I mean, a piece of paper came on the pitch and you could see they didn't quite know where to be. And it became more and more disjointed as the game went on. So there was a point near the end where we were going for it and we had 4 people stood up front. Travis marauding around the middle trying to do everything, a few at the back, and a gap of the whole of Pride Park between them. And Derby were kind of like, knock it long, so we would do. They'd head it away. Then we would go, oh, well, hold on, that's not working, which it wasn't. So they'd pass it around. But obviously Derby were just blocking every passing lane off. And it was... I don't know if it's because I'm so used to us being so well prepared and looking like we almost had a plan for each situation. It might not work, but I did always feel we were so well prepared. It felt like we weren't. Now, whether that is the case, whether that's because he's not had time to work with them, whether we just reacted to the situation and tried to fix it the best way he could, I don't know. But
that's where I feel like the injury made the big difference. So you're 2-0 down after 7 minutes. Your game plan is kind of out the window to an extent, but you've got a hell of a lot of game to go. You're playing the team that's bottom. You're playing a team that's bottom that hasn't been doing well. If we didn't have that injury, we stick to the same formation. We have maybe 5-10 minutes of calming down, maybe a couple of chances. Then we come into the game. I felt like it could have been that little bit different because, yes, okay, Gay gets his goal and it's a great time to score because then you're going to, as they say, the team talks very different when you go in when it's from 2-1 to from 2-0 to 2-1. But then that second half, I just think would have been very different having Gagpo in the normal formation. I just think that something would have been different there. So actually, yes, considering the 2 goals, awful. You don't want to do that. But to be able to have someone with the pace of Gagpo in that formation, I just feel like there would have been something a little bit more there because second half, it was like we was all out of ideas. Like you said, all the passing lanes were closed. They just sat back. We had no answers for anything. And it was like we were just seeing out time. I mean, it's not like I felt like we bombarded their goal. We had some decent possession. In fact, I think we had, what's it say? Nearly 70% possession. But you can have the ball all you want. if it's not in that final third or getting crosses into the box, because we was just passing it around, trying to get it into the channel, turning back, passing it around. And they were just happy for us to do it. And that's where I feel like if we just kept the formation, not had that Gagpo injury, it could have changed a little bit.
Mm. I know what you're saying, and I think sometimes I would have felt that, but I just felt I felt he had our number. I felt he was exploiting. He knew what we were going to do, and he knew how to exploit it, and it was working a treat. I think that's why he went with Sanderson instead of Cozy Dewberry, for example. I think he knew that, and he thought, actually, he's almost got our kryptonite here. We need to change something to stop that, do something he's not expecting, and then we just.
Do you think he panicked then? Do you think he panicked a bit?
I think he thought, well, yeah, because otherwise he would have gone Cozy Dewberry, wouldn't he? Instead, to the team that's bottom of the league, he's gone 5 at the back to try. He's changed his system to stop the bottom of the league because we couldn't stop them another way. And I was exactly like you. So, Hashi's gone through on goal. Unlucky. Hits the keeper's backside. Bounces, could have gone in. Gay scored, but it never felt, even despite that, it sounds crazy to say, but it never felt like we were going to come back into the game. There was never any jeopardy. You know, you look at it on the face of it, the way Derby are in the league and how little points they've got and how little points recently they've got, I was thinking, if we get one, the atmosphere in the ground's going to change here. They're going to get really squeaky, really nervous. I never felt them they piped down a little bit, but they never really got nervous. But we know Eustace can just shut a game down. He just shuts the game down, and we had no answer to it. Now, the flip side of all of this is when we've been training with him, obviously the players do the training. You have one team attacking in training, and you have one team defending. So the rest of our players, if you like, should have had an idea on how to try and break that down, because you will naturally work on that at the same time as the defending. But I just felt that we ran out of ideas. We looked a team devoid of ideas, but we looked a team really, really beaten after 7 minutes. And that never really came back into them. The fight was beaten out of them. And I don't know what's caused that, because we've not seen that all season. You know, a situation away at West Brom, if they were going to feel deflated, that was the time to feel deflated. And
I do think it was the occasion of playing Eustace. I really do.
And it may well be, but everything look points, doesn't it? We're only 3 points off the playoffs still. It's 4 with goal difference, but we are. You know, you go and win a 2-game week. We're away at Stoke, we're on a bad run, Cardiff at home. Decent games to follow this up. But honestly, the performance, whether it was just the occasion and everything together, I've never felt further away in a long time. It felt like a bit like you felt at that Birmingham game, Mike, where you were saying there's warning signs here. This honestly felt like there's some big problems here. Big problems. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it was a blip. I hope they put it behind them and we go into Stoke and actually we're all going, do you know what we were in about? We're back in the playoff run. But I feel like the next 2 games are massive for Ishmael, because if this turns out to not be a one-off, not be the occasion, not be whatever else you want to point at, then people are going to immediately start saying, well, hold on, what's this appointment about? And that was our fear, wasn't it, going into it? It's so difficult for him, such an awkward situation, that had we done this with Eustace, nobody would have been pointing their fingers at him. You might have had a niggle about who he picked or what formation, of course, but nobody would have really pointed their fingers at Eustace if we'd have gone on to finish 12th this season. But Ishmael will shoulder some of this blame. Whether that's right or wrong, he's going to do. That's not me blaming him. That is going to happen. He's going to come into question. And the way the team looked night and day from what we've seen all season potentially points to that. We've got 2 massive games this week. If we go and get 6 points, or 4 points will be a good fist of it. But I think if we want any chance of the playoffs, it's got to be 6. And it's massive for more than that. Forget the playoffs, forget the points. For actually us moving forward now, I need to see something. I need to see that we can be galvanised again and that he can get a grip of this.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's all we ever want as fans. You just want to see that your team's building. Sometimes, obviously, it doesn't work, and sometimes you appreciate the fact that your club needs to take a backward step now and again. But we just want to see that the team is building, and by that I mean we're being. I said last week, I just want us to be a little bit more predictable. So if we're going into a game, this is how we're going to play. We are going to show this amount of energy, and we might rotate this player into this. But now it just feels like it's all very predictable with us. That when we go into a period of games, that there's going to be some pretty poor results, but there might be just a random one that's really good. But the one thing I took from this game was it just looked mental. They looked mentally drained. So physically, they were still buzzing around. They were still getting forward. Campbell, when he came on, he was a bit annoying because he did try some flicks, and it's like, no, I want you to be a bit more direct. Now we're losing, mate. You know, I don't want you to do the fancy stuff. You know, I wanted us to show some energy. I felt like we did, but mentally, I think they made a lot of wrong decisions and they struggled. And Derby they were just flying. Then they were willing to put the tackles in. They were willing to bully when they needed to. And to be fair, they showed probably a bit more quality than we did. But the one player I wanted to bring up was Woodrow. So Woodrow, when he came on, he didn't actually get a very good rating on whoscored.com. But I thought he came on and he actually showed some energy and endeavour. I mean, I could be wrong because I haven't had a chance to watch this one fully back. But when he came on, he looked like he was trying to take the game, but it just wasn't working out for him. Did you feel like Woodrow did much when he came on?
I thought there was plenty of endeavour, yeah. Never really thought he was a goal threat. But again, what's he played now? 30 minutes before this in a year? Comes back to the recruitment, doesn't it? That, you know, it's not the quality of them, it's whether they're fit enough. I just think my whole thoughts on the game were he's obviously tried to go full energy in the forward areas. He's tried to go a bit more with energy in the press. So he's gone Ohashi instead of Cantwell. He's gone Cardboy, he's gone Dolan. I get that. But it felt like it played into their hands even more. You know, our strength has come from being quite well drilled and quite solid and then maybe breaking. We kind of played with a bigger gap between the midfield and the attacking sections than I've seen us have all season. And I thought we just got exploited. I feel like we're a bit caught between two at the moment. I felt like that the last game at times. And I think now he's got to be himself. He's got to be true to himself. And he's got to go with what he genuinely believes. Forget what Eustace has done. Not rip everything up, but he's got to go with what he believes because you die by your sword. And if he goes thinking, well, this has kind of been working, it's no longer working, is it? It is now broken. So you go with what you believe is going to fix it because players will see through you if you're not being authentic to yourself. And I think he's got to go to Stoke and to Cardiff with his own plan. And the players have to buy into it. Whether they're capable of following that plan through, whether we've got the energy to do this high pressing, whether they need a pre-season that's different. I don't know any of that. But for me, he's now got to go with what he believes and not this sort of hybrid mess that we've seen.
Well, that's what I found weird is it is that hybrid thing, and you can't expect him to do everything that Eustace had built because obviously he's a different manager. He's got his different techniques, but it did feel like there was a bit of panic in there. Obviously, we've got the international break coming up, so that gives him an opportunity to hopefully get the guys together. We've got 2 games before then, which we're going to discuss now. But before we do that, have you got any 3-word reviews that were particularly funny or
there's quite a few I can't say. I got some. I'm going to pick a couple out, mate. We've got Gareth Moore's Lambs versus Rams. Yeah. I said a couple. I'm picking 3. Andy, and then about 8 million numbers after his name, said out-battled, out-fought, and out-coached. It felt like it. And then Blue Rover 77 said, I'm just skipping over a couple. Blue Rover 77 said, change it now. I agree. Yeah.
Well, is it going to change now? We're going into the Stoke and Cardiff game. Obviously, Stoke is the midweek game. He won't have had long on the training grounds. They've got a very informed striker that we're going to talk about. Do you think he's going to have the opportunity to even make any changes, or is this just a case of picking them up, motivating them, and pointing them in the right direction?
Pretty much the latter. We've got injuries galore. I think bring Dennis in for Cardboard and stick with what you want to do. Go with that attacking setup if you want. Me personally, I think that's a great setup. Really exciting. Loads of energy. But they need to not be two separate units. But he's not going to have time to coach them exactly how he wants. So he's got to find a way of winning. Now, we've seen Eustace leaves, David Law steps into the breach and manages to get us ticking over. So it can be done, but he's got to find a way to make it work. And that's literally his job.
Well, what's interesting now is we're playing a team that, you know, they're quite physical and they can chuck it into the box. So they're going to have learnt something from Derby and they're going to start throwing it in. And Sam Gallagher's going to be going in on Pears to people that don't necessarily like being physical against each other.
1,000,000%. I mean, Sam Gallagher scored a header at weekend, I believe, and it said that was a trademark bullet header, was the term.
Wow.
Apparently he's well known for it, said on the commentary when I was in the Harvester before the Derby game. I should have known at that point that something was a little off, but yeah.
Well, the funny thing is obviously we get a lot of emails, messages, comments, and you have people saying we're far too negative, we're far too positive. You know, it's funny the reviews we get of people, but I feel like with this one I am a little bit negative now.
100%.
I just think this is gonna. I just think this is going to be a very difficult game. It's not an easy place to go to, like they say. Midweek away game at Stoke is not easy. I think that, you know, playing an ex-striker, you'd normally put your life on him scoring. I'm a bit nervous about this one. Should I be?
I think that I am also pretty negative. I'm aware of that right now. But that's how I felt. I had to stand and watch that, and it felt pretty grim. And I can't right now see a way forward. Even though we're 3 points off the place, I can't. So I will see with my eyes, and then I'll be convinced otherwise. I didn't see many positives. So going into Wednesday, no, I don't feel overly positive. It's a cold Wednesday night in Stoke. We normally do really well against Stoke, if you want some positive. They hate playing us. They feel like they're an absolute basket case of a team. They feel like they're pretty much on their way to League One more than anything. They don't like Andrew Moran. They don't particularly like Sam Gallagher. They don't particularly like anything to do with the club. They feel like their manager's been just another one in the dugout that's, you know, going to be let down by their recruitment and their board. So they're all arguably in a bigger mess than we feel like we are right now. So the opportunity is there for us. We've got positive memories of going there. Yeah, we've
got to get at them quick and get that crowd against them. It's the old classic, isn't it? You get the crowd against them, and it opens up. I mean, we've obviously beaten them 3-0 at their place 2 years ago, something like that. Was it?
Yeah.
Time's flying, isn't it? You know, and I do feel like if we can. It is that classic. Get the crowd against them. I just want us. I just want us to put the game to bed early if we're going to do it. I can't be doing with stress. I don't want us to be 1-0, and then I'm just worried, and then we're backs against the wall for the whole game. I want us to be a nice 2-0 early after the first 7 minutes, just like Derby did against us, and I'll be nice and comfortable. Is it too much to ask?
No.
Sounds like it.
No, it feels like it. But no, I think I have good memories of going to Stoke. They're also in a bit of a shambles, which, I mean, it sounds crazy us saying a bit of a shambles. We're 3 points off the playoffs, for God's sake. It's second game in for a new manager. It just felt bigger than that at weekend in many ways. Forget Eustace. It was just, it's been a poor start for the manager, hasn't it? Probably the poorest we could have hoped for. So,
but like you said, it's performance. It's not the results you're looking at; it's the performance. Because I mean, because if we look at the results, so let's have a look since Eustace left. So we've been West Brom 2-0. The performance was there. The result was there. The performance was there. We beat Plymouth 2-0. Okay, the performance. Some people argued, just saying it was, Plymouth didn't offer much, so we was not really out of autopilot, but still we had to do it. But then the performance was terrible against Swansea, losing 3-0. The performance against Norwich was pretty poor, and I felt like we stole the point there. And then the performance was poor against Derby. So I can take results if they're not going, because like you rightly said, sometimes they just don't go your way, but the performances aren't there. So that's effectively 3 games on the bounce now. So I mean, the Norwich draw, splits a lot of opinions down the fan base, whether it was a poor performance or a good performance. But I personally thought it wasn't the best performance. So 3 games on the trot now, we've had poor performances. It's not ideal.
No, and let's not pretend this is a new problem in terms of results. We've lost 5 out of the last 6 away from home. Eustace was on a poor run. Was it 2 wins out of 11? The difference being the Oxford game was poor, wasn't it? But I still didn't feel like we were all at sea. That's what worried me at weekend. Players were arguing with each other. We looked easy to carve open. We looked devoid of ideas. We looked disjointed as a team. It looked like people didn't know their roles. That's what worried me. And if that had been under Eustace, I would have said exactly the same. It just felt like everything that was the foundation of what was good this season on the pitch was no longer there at weekend. Now, it's not disappear for good. That can't just go away overnight, but they've got to get it back, and they've got to get it back quick. But results-wise, this isn't a new problem. We've been on a poor run of form recently, since probably the new year. I'm just looking here. The last 6 away games, we lost obviously at Derby, lost 3-0 at Swansea. That was poor, very poor. We won at West Brom, then we lost away at Queen's Park Rangers, a poor performance. We lost away at Bristol City, a poor performance. We lost away at Oxford, a poor performance. It just felt that it was the disjointed nature, I think, and the way the players were getting at each other at weekend. But it's not a new problem. I'm not saying this is Ismael's fault. I'm not saying any of that. And I think we've got to be careful that we don't judge him too early. But my point before was the fan base are bound to do that if performances and what they're seeing, it is like it was at weekend.
And that's exactly what I said last week, this week, and what we've talked about plenty of times is, for us, we just want a consistent kind of Rovers. So everyone looks at form guide. We're not necessarily looking at that. We just want to see consistent performances, and that's what we're not seeing. Yes, we've got some individual players that are showing some really good consistency, but generally as a team, it seems to be very up and down. I do hope he sorts it. I mean, we've got now these 2 games. You said that if we've got any real desire of playoffs, you want 6 points. I'd snap your hand off at 4 points, and right now I'd be happy with 3 points and 2 performances that we can look at and say, do you know what? There's something there. They're coming back, and then they go into the international break off the back of that. If I think anything less than 3 points, and I'm really, really worried. I don't think we'll get dragged into a relegation battle at all. I just don't. I think there's too much trash between us, and yes, I have probably jinxed it now, but I just think there's too many poor teams below us, and I think we will get something. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, I'll be disappointed if we don't get at least 3 points. What's your thoughts on these 2 now?
I think for the playoffs, I feel we've got to get 6. because the other teams are riding on the crest of a wave. I think for us, longer term, forget the playoffs now, I need to see 2 performances. It doesn't matter about the result. Of course, it always does. But I need to see 2 performances I can get behind. 2 performances I see a team united again. I can see a clear plan that the players know what they're doing and the way that we're set up. I need to see all of that back in the team. Whatever that is, whatever way we want to set up, can set up 5-5-0 as long as the team look like they know what they're doing and it's a formation and a system they look like they believe in and we can see some way forward with it. Fine.
Yeah, I want to see progress.
Yeah. I need to see a way that we can move forward with this because it was shambolic at weekend, and that needs to be a blip. Blips in terms of
that's the thing. You're playing 2 teams now. After you've just played a team in the relegation area. You're playing 2 more teams in a relegation battle. If you put in 3 poor performances at that level, and you're lowering yourself to that level, that is a huge concern.
Huge concern for the future, yeah. And that's what I'm getting at. I think results can happen. They can happen in the Championship. Look at Leeds losing at Portsmouth. It happens. But it was the performance. That's the only thing I am talking about when I say how concerned I am. If we'd have gone and lost at Derby, whatever, it happens. The performance was what worried me, and that's what I need to see on Wednesday. Of course, I want 6 points. Of course, I want us to win. But I'll still be sat here this time next week a little bit concerned if we scrape 2 wins and the performances look a bit poor. I'll not be as concerned, don't get me wrong. But in some ways, I'll be more positive about the longer term if I see 2 good performances and 2 draws.
I mean, the weird thing is next week we could be sat here talking about 2-3-0 wins and how we're brilliant and we're getting promoted and, get the open top bus ready. That's the life of a Rovers fan. We're just so up and down. And this is why I think a few fans, that we look around on X and they're extremely negative, and there's some that they get accused of being happy clappers. We said at the start of the season we'd take a mid-table finish, and that's probably where we should be. But we have a real opportunity here to build, and I trust this manager coming in. I trust that he's got a squad to deal with now. I know we've had some more injuries, but generally there's some players come back, so he now has an opportunity to build. My only real concern is not having the time to set them up now for Stoke. So I think I would take just a smash and grab against Stoke. But the Cardiff at home, I really want to see a good performance in front of the home fans before going into international break, for everyone then to go into that on a positive. Because I think if you have a really good performance against Stoke and win, but then you go to Cardiff, have Cardiff come and it's a poor performance and lose, the fans are going to remember that, across the international break.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely, of course. And I think the way I am right now is if we'd have ended up in 12th under Eustace, I would have gone, do you know what? Eustace's stock has gone up in my eyes. If we can back him, if we had have backed him, it'd have been all around that. But Ismail's had 2 games and I'll judge him at the end of the season. He's not had a good start, let's be honest. But we talked about it last week. It's a really difficult, awkward situation to come into, but that's his job and he's got to get a grip of it. So, to
be fair, when Eustace came in, there was people arguing. He didn't stop the rot. We still got into a relegation battle under him, and then obviously we ended up staying up. And then look what happened. So, I don't think I would actually judge Ismae until he's had a full pre-season, and basically similar kind of time period to what Eustace had. But I hoped so much this year that we wouldn't have this lull. We've discussed why we get it. It comes down to depth and quality of squad. We get why it happens. I just hoped it wasn't going to happen this year, and it looks like it is, and that's why it's so frustrating. But before we move on from these games, is there any player in particular that really needs to step up for these 2 games in your eyes?
I think Gay is doing. I'd like to see Ohashi back to full form. I think I probably won't play him against Stoke. I think after being out for a while and then playing, he probably better coming off the bench now in the next game. So for me, the 3 players that I'm looking at to have a big impact this week are Todd Cantwell, Tyrese Dolan, and Mr. Dennis, because I think he will start on Wednesday.
I agree. And I'm going to add a 4th into there, and that's going to be Aynsley Pears. I think he needs to really show now that he's got the mental strength to come back from some of these errors that he's making. I want him to have some good games. I want him to prove the doubters wrong, me being one of them. I also want him to impress Tony Coton, the scouts that's apparently watching him from Man United. Talk to me about these links, Mark, because you tweeted, so to peek beyond the curtain for people listening, we both have access to our X Twitter, and I'll put something out, you might put something out, and you put something out on ours about him being linked, and I was like, nah, Mark's taking the mick here. And I messaged you saying, is this real? And your message was like, yeah. And I'm like, I still genuinely didn't believe you. So talk to me about this link.
Well, it's an Alan Nixon link, and we all know Alan Nixon does Alan Nixon things to get clicks. But apparently, Manchester United want to sign an English goalkeeper to help with their quota, which lots of teams do. They sign one who can be third choice and stuck on the bench. The bit that concerned me in terms of it being true said an all sort of challenge for the number 1 spot. Now, I have enjoyed watching Man United this year. There's not many teams I want to see a demise and enjoy it week in, week out as Man United. But surely not. Surely they're not signing Aynsley Pears to challenge for the number 1 spot. Now, Man City they had Richard Wright for years, didn't they? They still got, who is it now? Is someone about 93, isn't there? They had Stuart Taylor at one spell. Yeah. Is it Scott Carson, maybe? Is that who they've got?
Yeah.
Right. So they've got him, and he's like third choice, and he travels along. He has the best life in the world. He travels along to all the Champions League games, and he ticks a box for them because you have to have so many English players. And Man United, they've said that they're going to have to sell some of their English players because they're valued more. So there's Manu potentially going. So there is potential in that they need to fill that quota with players that have no chance of playing. But I just can't believe this is a sentence that's going to come out of my mouth. Would Aynsley Pears go to not play a game when he's a championship goalkeeper? I mean, it's something that you would do as a retiring goalkeeper or a keeper, like when Tom Heaton went, whose body was breaking down, I think, a little bit. And it was then almost a step into coaching. But would you do it as Aynsley Pears? I mean, maybe he fancies his chances of displacing an honour.
Yeah, I mean, it is a strange link, isn't it? Because, you look at surely the plethora of options they've got, young and old, and yet Aynsley Pears is the one being linked. I mean, I'm guessing, if we're being realistic, I'm guessing he was just a name on a spreadsheet. Look at the second tier of the, of English football. Who've we got that might come, lives local?
There's not many English ones.
Not going to be on much money. And to be fair, you look at the Rayers and the Jason Steeles and stuff, they might think that we're churning out quality goalkeepers. I mean, obviously both were near the top of the Premier League playing their football. They might have just gone, hang on, Blackburn maybe churning out some quality here. It's a very strange one. I mean, he's not going to remove him. Surely he's not impressed Coton at all. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much money he's on, but for Man United, they seem to be penny pinching at the moment. So they're probably just looking for the cheapest option, and they probably know that, we might be shopping him around a little bit come the end of the season.
Well, there's not many English goalkeepers that are playing much football, is there? Other than if you're going for Pickford, and they're obviously not going to go to that level. So if they are just wanting somebody to tick a box, to be fair, he's young. He's playing a lot of games. It is plausible in that sense. It really is. I can't see him challenging Onana. No, I've not watched Onana that much, but I think if they're going to be going to that level, then
I can't stand Onana, to be honest. But then again, I'm not even a terrible Onana is still going to be better than Pears.
So you're taking a swap deal, are you, or are we all right with that?
Genuinely, Onana stresses me out.
Okay.
he stresses me out so much. I just want a traditional goalkeeper. I just want a goalkeeper that saves the ball, that can catch a ball, that's willing to be brave. Is that too much to ask?
Well, it seems so. But whilst we're talking about goalkeepers, that lot down the road having a pop at Thomas Kaminski singing "It's Happened Again," I'm not having this. I felt really like I needed to defend him. I didn't like it. And if he goes down to League One, I was never Kaminski's biggest fan. I thought he was a bit overrated as a Rovers keeper because he came after some absolute, I'll edit myself, poor keepers. But he was decent, and I would take decent all day long. And if Luton are going down to League One, then I would take him back in a heartbeat. So if that was a realistic thing, can you imagine Jason Steele, buddy hell, Aynsley Pears? It's because one takes one mask off and it's the same. Goes up the road to Man United, and we get some money for him. And with that money, now I know we only ever invest 10%, so we're obviously spending 50 grand then on Kaminski if he goes for $500,000. My maths right there? I don't know. It's been a long day. And Kaminski comes through the door. Great. Sold. Yes, please.
I think it'd be brilliant. I mean, I think that there'd be a lot of people looking at Kaminski. And I genuinely think that he should have probably left Luton. I think he probably would have had the opportunity to leave. At the end of the day, he's been getting into Belgium squads. He's been quite highly rated at Luton. He was highly rated by us, whether people agree or not. So I think he would actually. I think if they went down, he would have a hell of a lot of opportunities above us. But yeah, that would be absolute brilliant. It would be brilliant to have someone. I mean, there's a lot of people in the fan base that wouldn't have him back and actually thought he was overrated, like you said. But I think that, goalkeepers are very hard to find the ones that, tick all the boxes, but he ticked more than most. So yeah, it would be brilliant to have him back. It would be brilliant to have him back. I mean, that would be. He's gone away, got more experience. He's going to come back a better goalkeeper than when he left us. So yeah, it would be a major win for us. But I can't see Pears leaving. I can see Ismae maybe dropping him, but it's whether Toth's done enough to in training and in the second team to convince Ismae that he's the number one, and he probably hasn't.
Well, that was my next question. I think there's as much chance as ever now that Ismail's and obviously a new manager in, but I would now drop Pears for Toth and go, right, Toth, let's see what you're like till the end of the season. Because for my mind, Pears needs an upgrade. So we need to see, for me, if Toth is going to be that upgrade or we need to go out and get one. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, from what I saw of Toth, yes, there was a couple of things he did that haven't been fantastic in games. A little bit of decision making, some rush of blood to the head. But for me, it's now it's worth rolling the dice on. I've seen Pears have some absolute unreal games. He's kept us in it. He's made some great saves. But the more sample size we're getting, the more games he's playing, the more that's diluted. So yes, we've seen him make some great saves, but it's what have you done for me lately? And he hasn't done much for us lately. There's been some times where he's looked really ropey with his clearances, his distribution, and ultimately coming out for crosses, he's absolutely killed us. But Toth, from what I've seen, in the very small sample size, is that he is willing to come out for crosses. He is brave, and the players have trusted him. His distribution's probably similar level to Pears. But so for me, I'm just thinking, do you know what? Roll the dice on it. Have a go. Plus, as a manager coming in, it kind of points the finger at everyone, saying, "Look, I'm willing to make these difficult decisions. I'm willing to let, the form decide. If you're not in form, you're not playing." Whereas I felt like Eustace didn't necessarily do that. He just stuck to his team, and it did work. It did work, but now it's not working. And now we've got to start thinking, how do we put a rocket up the arse of some of these players? And if that's dropping a player that's not doing it and bringing someone else in, it could be a positive.
Well, we saw and talked about how the defenders trusted Toth with his, coming to claim things, with his passing back. He was poor against Wolves, but the Middlesbrough game, I thought he was okay. I completely agree. I think it's worth rolling the dice. For me, I don't recall Pears having a really good game. I know people talk about him making some good saves now and again. I don't really recall them. I think he generally makes saves that he should make, but sometimes doesn't. I think he's got mistakes in him. I think he's a poor goalkeeper. I really do. I think he performed at a level at the beginning of the season that was decent. I could cope with that as a championship keeper. But I said back then I would have replaced him in January if possible with about 10 championship keepers, and I stand by it.
This is the thing. A lot of people have been putting on X. I hate calling it X. A lot of people have been putting on social media. I'm going to start using that one. Videos of his saves and stuff like that. Goalkeepers make good saves. You could stick me, 42 years old, knees and hips don't work in a game. Just because I might make a good save doesn't make me a good goalkeeper. If a striker scores 1 goal but misses 10. You're not going to say, well, he scored a goal and it was a cracker. You're going to say, well, he missed 10. It's the same with goalkeepers. Yes, he makes some good saves, but with a goalkeeper, you want the consistency. You want the sample size to be that they're doing the simple stuff right time and time again, and now and again they'll make a good save. Because that's what Friedel used to do. Friedel did all the simple stuff absolutely spot on and rarely made a mistake. Now and again, he would make some absolute worldies, but generally he was just known for being a massively solid goalkeeper. That's what makes a good goalkeeper. And if Toth has an opportunity to get some games under his belt and relax, because ultimately that's what you want. Because again, going back to the Derby game, the reason why that works, like tossing it into the area on top of the goalkeeper, is because they've normally quite panicky in the first 10 minutes. So in the first 10 minutes of any game, just put the goalkeeper under pressure constantly. It's the same the last 10 minutes, because now it's the nerves, the mental side of the game comes, and that's where Pears has obviously started to fail a little bit. So let's give Toth the opportunity to come in, have some games, take Pears out the limelight, something you've said in the past, because that can really help. And it puts a rocket up Pears, it puts a rocket up other people. It gives some confidence to some players that might be on the cusp that thought they didn't have a chance, and they might well say, well, look at Toth, he's now getting his opportunity. If I work hard, I might get my opportunity. So it could be the mind game that Ismae needs to get them going.
Why not? I think the phrase you used, Mike, was spot on. It's worth rolling the dice.
But another player to talk about that I wanted to bring up with you, and you've mentioned him already, someone that we praised at the start of his Rovers career. We wavered. Make-A-Wish Maxar, I called him. I got called out. He obviously listened and thought, F you, Beaty, I'm now going to go and prove you wrong. Talk about Gay. I mean, his performances lulled quite a bit, and then he's come back, and it seems to have clicked with him. The little moves, the drag backs, getting into position, putting his body on the line. I mean, he put himself into the goalkeeper a few times. He has no respect for his body, which is exactly what I want out of a 6-foot-odd striker. Is this him now? Is this the Maxar Gay we can expect going forward?
I think so. I think he came into it and he did okay, didn't he? He was having impacts in games, but wasn't necessarily a big goal threat. Scored in the cups, obviously, but then he was in and out of the team. He was kind of utilised as a bit of a battering ram, and then take him off and right, let's go for the game. And then it felt like it got on top of him a bit that he hadn't scored, and he was snatching at things. Got sent off, obviously, at the Dingle Dome, and a few things started to go wrong. And then it's clicked, and it's not fluke. It don't feel like it's form-based. Going back to the form and the class, if you like, this feels like this is actually him. I think there is an element of him that he's always going to have in him where he could score one from 30 yards and could miss one from 2 yards. I think there's always going to be an element of that, but he is a real bloody handful. Works his socks off, sticks his body where it could get hurt because he wants to score a goal. And that's exactly what you want from a striker. I think Ismae will love that sort of striker. The players around him love it. And he's now getting goals in games where he's ticking over. So one of my big bugbears with strikers is those that people just look at simplistically. I know it obviously sounds obvious, but they look at how many goals they've scored and then, their goals per game ratio. But Michael Owen was the worst for this. He'd go on runs of like 4 or 5 games and he'd score 2 or 3 in every game. Great. But then Shearer would score in every game and might have the same amount of goals, but obviously he might miss a couple. But generally speaking, he'd have more impact across more games, whereas Michael would have a massive impact in games. I think I'm going to try and have a look at the impact that Gay is having in terms of points for us. I feel like he's having a real big impact in terms of the number of points difference he's made for us. He doesn't necessarily go and get 2 or 3 in a game, but he seems like he's going to be a striker that will get one in. What's he got now? 1 in Championship, 6 goals in 20 starts, so 35 games.
So having a quick look here then, based on what you just said, this was the first game where he's had a goal involvement and it's not resulted in points.
Right, so there you go. Yeah. And he's also, we've got to laugh because one of the assists is when it hit his heel when he should have scored. But he's had 6 assists, hasn't he? So he's now had 14 goal involvements overall. 2 in the League Cup, so 12 in the Championship. And some of them...
Well, we said, though, didn't we? He needed something like that. He needed something just to go in off his shoulder, which is what happened against Sheffield Wednesday, and it would change him. Do you think that was what changed him, just getting that first Championship goal?
And it was a winner, wasn't it, as well? It was a big goal. He was the man then. I think he's somebody that... He looks like somebody that really needs to feel loved, doesn't he? And the fans adore him. But I think he's a real handful. And I think, at the beginning of the season, we looked at him after about 20 minutes and thought, oh, my God, he's won a header. He's an upgrade on Gallagher. Then we did waver a little bit and think, he's too unpredictable here. We can't rely on him. And he's settled right down. And I feel like this is him now. He's not trying too hard. He's not trying silly things. But he's consistently a handful if you play to his strengths. And we also said that at the beginning of the season, that we weren't utilising him properly, so we couldn't fully judge him. I like him. I think him and Ohashi have improved our forward line. I'm not saying they're the answer in the long-term run. I'm not saying they're going to get us 20, 25 goals, either of them. But I think they have made a real difference. And I think with his goals and his goal involvement, he probably deserves to be our number 9 going into the new season. We just need to find people around him. And that's why I've said the 3 for me going into these games are the 3 that will be buzzing in and around him, because they now need to start getting goals and assists. Dolan got another involvement, really. It probably didn't go down as one at weekend, but he did. He's had a few recently, ironically with Gay, generally. But when he simplifies his game, he gets the ball out wide and he dinks it in, puts it in an area, and Gay gets on the end of it. It isn't rocket science football sometimes.
Oh, yeah. We sometimes make football way more difficult than we have to because we're overthinking things. But going back to the Gay thing, I can kind of. I'm looking at his results, the team results, and his goal involvements when he was included off the bench and so on. I'm looking at that now, and I can just tell where we wavered. And he'd gone through because he started quite well, getting his assists, and I think he got one in the cup, a goal in the cup. Then obviously he gets sent off against the Dingles. And you could just tell then there was just nothing from him. His ratings were quite low. The team was winning, but he just had no involvement. And then it goes in off Sheffield Wednesday and suddenly, bang, you can see goal, assist. Obviously, there's a few games where he hasn't done as much, but you could just see, like, it seemed to be a change in him. And yeah, we saw something at the start. We wavered away, and hopefully now he's found his way. I think what's clicked with him, I think he's understood now how much time he has on the ball. So before, I felt like he held it a little bit too much sometimes, and he didn't quite time his run. So like when the ball's coming over long, he's kind of waiting for the ball to come to him and not expecting the defenders to go straight through the back of him. So he was losing a lot of headers. And I think he's figured out the league. He's figured out, well, actually, I've got to assume that I've got to be proactive to every single ball. Like the ball's not going to come to me. I've got to come to it. And I think there's a little bit of that with him. Some of the tricks and the flicks now, you can tell he's got the confidence. You can tell he's got something about him. And like I said, he's willing to put his body on the line. And that is the one thing that fans want. I know that it's really primeval to say, but you just want to see someone going and willing to put their body on the line. And he's shown it. He's shown it. And it was quite funny, actually, at the weekend, seeing him get frustrated, because you're used to him just smiling through everything. But you could tell he was getting frustrated. I just hope this form continues, because we've been crying out for a striker. We don't expect us to go and get the next Jordan Rhodes and the next Alan Shearer. We're not expecting that, but to just have someone that can maybe go and get some goals. Yes, he's only got 6 goals, but there was a huge period there that he didn't score. So I'm judging him now from, effectively the Sheffield Wednesday game. That's kind of where I'm now judging him from, because now I feel like it's clicked, and now we can see what he's actually about and whether Ismail's going to use him properly. Because I think you said, didn't you, that Ismail does like a big striker?
Loves a big striker. Does likes to be nice and direct and play off him and have lots of people buzzing in and around him. Well, we've got the players for that. You've got you've got Gay and you've got Woodrow, I suppose, as the alternative for that. But then you have got Dolan or Hashi. You've got Dennis. You've got Cobbo's injured. But you have got them. You've got Cozy Dewberry if you really want.
Well, before we wrap up the podcast, Mark, we've put another question of the week out there.
Yes, we did.
Do you want to let the listeners know what we've just put out there?
Yeah. So it's a good one, this. We've obviously not actually... We should really think about these, shouldn't we, before we talk about them? But we'll give our instant reaction. That's what we like. Question of the week this week, including their time at Blackburn only, which is difficult because, you might have loved what Roy Hodgson did at Rovers, but hated what he did at Liverpool. Well, then you just judge him on his Rovers, but he's not one of the names. So we want to know, can you rank these managers, sort of their time at Blackburn only? So Gary Boyer, Paul Lambert, Jon Dahl Tomasson, Tony Mowbray, and John Eustace.
So I'm not ready to kind of make a decision on this yet.
No, I'm not.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's definitely one that we need the listeners below to comment, but definitely go across to our Twitter. I mean, out of those, who's your favourite? Who's your top one?
I've got to go Mowbray. You think where the club were when he took over, we weren't talking about football. We were an absolute shambles of a club. He gave us our love for the club back. He gave us discussions about football, about team selection, about why has he got Bradley Johnson in a false 9. it wouldn't have been even on the agenda when he took over. It would have been everything else. Yeah, I think it's going to have to be.
I said time and again, Mowbray solidified us, brought in Dak, and between them and the whole League One season coming back up, it made us love Rovers again.
Yeah.
And that's why I will always appreciate what he did and how things were at that time, because we'd all deviate, we'd all just kind of had a bit of a lull. It didn't feel like it was our club again. It felt like we had too many mercenaries in the club. And then it came to a point where when we got relegated, we felt like that was it. Like, this is it now. This is our club. We are going to be, a Bolton, a Blackpool, just down here, just that's it. And Mowbray comes in, obviously, before the relegation, but he sorts us out. He brings in some cracking players. And yes, I moaned, saying he never had a plan B, and some of his football was quite boring at times. But we started to love Rovers again, and then Dak came in and made everyone excited, and we had some characters, and it was really good. But I'm gonna have a good think about that one, and I might put the comments on the X. But Mark, do you feel better talking this through?
No. Normally I do, but I will not feel. Normally I've managed to shake it off from Saturday, and I might still be a bit disgruntled or whatever. And I've normally managed to process it in my brain and become quite rational and level-headed about it. I don't feel like I am at the moment. I feel like I'm still really concerned and worried and disappointed. And I don't think I can shake that until Wednesday. So I just hope that the players feel the same. I think that they need to feel, and I'm sure they do, that they need to put this right on Wednesday. And I'm not having a pop at the players, because I think they've been amazing this season. And wherever we finish, as I said last week, it's not their fault if we fall off a cliff now. But I hope for them and us that the season doesn't peter out, and that we turn it around on Wednesday, and actually we give it, to quote a certain manager, we give it a right good go, as Gary Boyer would say, between now and the end of the season.
And that's all we can ever ask. But thanks for joining me, Mark.
Thank you, buddy.
And thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you for watching. If you have any opinions on anything that we've spoken about in today's pod, or anything you'd like to discuss, please make sure you comment on all our X posts that we put out there. We do read all the comments. And obviously the YouTube videos, that's the big thing for us. Whilst you're there, like, subscribe, share with all your friends and family. We are trying to grow, and we're trying to build it for you guys. But the more you comment, the more we can see what you like and don't like. And hopefully next week we're all positive again, 6 points, and we're booking that open top bus. But until then, have a good week, and we'll see you next time.